Bank of Canada, we heard from them this week. They're not lowering interest rates, but they are trimming the growth forecast for the Canadian economy next year. One province that has certainly seen better days is the province of Alberta. Rebound in the price of oil, however, fueling some hopes of a rebound in the economy, particularly in the oil patch. Joining us now from Calgary is Curtis Stange. He's president and CEO of ATB Financial. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Greg. Good to be with you.
I always like to think of the financial institutions not only as sort of a bellwether, a reflection of the strength of an economy, but the people running it obviously have to have that crystal clear picture, that 10,000-foot view of what is going on. So Alberta had a pretty rough start to the year. Are you confident that there's some things happening that could start to turn things around?
Yeah, well, thanks, Greg. I've been in the role a year now, and it's been a very exciting first year. There's no doubt about it, and the economy has been part of it. But I will just say at the outset, it's a bit humbling to lead the second best place to work in Canada, and yet really exciting about the future. And to your point, the economics has, while our core industry of energy has been under stress for a while, there are some other green shoots in the industry that are looking pretty promising for Alberta.
So one of the things that people are hoping will happen is that the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, that we can get past whatever we need to get past, get those shovels in the ground, get the project moving. Would that be one of those things that would start to bring a little optimism back to people watching the Albertan economy?
Yeah, definitely. We think that all levels of government have to work together, and there's no doubt that the pipeline infrastructure and getting the natural resource to the tidewater is a really positive first step. I mean, who wouldn't support moving energy in a safe, environmentally friendly, and an economically viable way? So we support that national infrastructure, and there's no doubt the recent movements on the Trans Mountain pipeline are really positive news for Alberta and more broadly Canada.
Now, the premiers, of course, are meeting in Saskatoon. They had been at the Stampede, a small group of them, earlier this week. Some of them have banded together to try to put certain issues before the federal government and before their own people. What do you think some of the most important discussions are coming out of those dialogues?
Yeah, I think in general collaboration. Like I would be a fan, and we are fans of ATB, of more broadly all levels of government collaborating together. And I think where we have the national interest at mind first is really important. And one of those would be the Trans Mountain pipeline. So I think any time that you can get ministers together that represent certain provinces and jurisdictions in Canada, and then more broadly all the ministers together like they are in Saskatchewan, is a good thing. Getting people at the table, talking about the core issues, and doing what's right for the country is a really positive step.
Now, when Alberta's oil economy is suffering, of course, then it starts to flow through the rest of the economy. I think about what's happened in the housing market in Calgary and in Edmonton, and things are still pretty subdued there. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of activity, economic activity flowing out of the sort of doldrums of the oil industry?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the knock-on effect of the price collapse back in 2014 has impacted a lot of industries. And the housing industry, as you mentioned, is one of those. And so there would be, as we listen to our customers and consumer customers and home building customers, the industry that represents the home builders, there's no doubt that the pace of growth and the volume of sales is down over previous years. However, again, my sense is that there's some renewed optimism back into the market. And while we've got some obstacles and some hurdles to get over, my sense is that we're getting back on our toes, if you will. And so I'm cautiously optimistic about the future.
It's one of the things I've heard from people in Alberta and other areas where the housing markets haven't been on fire is that all of the levers that have been pulled, particularly the ones at the federal level to try to cool housing, some people say, well, this is a little bit unfair. We need help in Calgary in stabilizing industry, not further impediments. Are some of these sort of big brush strokes from the federal government hurting Alberta in a way that they should have thought about?
Yeah, thanks for that, Greg. You know, I would say that the conditions have changed, and you may be referencing the B20 basket of policy that was implemented back in early 2018. And the conditions simply have changed. There's been numerous interest rate increases since that time. So I don't think it's the policy from the federal government alone. I think, again, there's economic conditions and the knock-on effect of the collapse in the natural resource price, in addition to the economics and the B20. On balance to that, we believe that we think the federal government still needs to, and the regulators still need to listen to Canadians broadly and continue to have a look, especially at the component of the 200 basis point stress test. We believe, while perhaps it's not punitive, there's no doubt that the increase in interest rates on top of the 200 basis point stress test are making it difficult for some Canadians that would normally be able to get into a home, can't get into a home. So we're one of, let's look at the conditions as they change and look at the potential of reducing the size of that stress test from 200 basis points to perhaps something a little smaller.
Would you expect to hear much on that file during the federal election campaign? I mean, after they get through the summer barbecue circuit, things are going to get pretty intense on that front. Would you be hopeful that the leaders are going to start making some promises on this front?
Yeah, I think at all levels of government, when you're in election mode, that the governments, no matter what level, municipal, provincial, or federal, should be listening to the constituents. And my sense is that industry leaders and consumers in Canada and everything in between will be really raising their voices on this one and really encouraging the government to continue to look at policies to make sure that they're not punitive to more broadly the provinces outside of some really high growth spots in the country.
I wanted to ask you too, I want to take it back to the Trans Mountain discussion. We're waiting to hear who might want to buy ultimately that pipeline. The Canadian people own it right now. We know that there is an Indigenous group trying to put together a bid. Would ATB Financial be a supporter of that bid in a financial way? Obviously, they would have to secure financing as well.
Yeah, we're a fan of an owner that can get the shovels in the ground and to get the pipeline built and get it to Tidewater so that we can move an important natural resource for the province of Alberta and the country of Canada in a safe, environmentally friendly, and an economic way. So whatever that ownership looks like, moving away from the federal government and owned by Canadians, I think is a positive step. And so, we would support the number of different groups and entities that have stepped forward for interest's sake, because again, it's an important national infrastructure for Canadians broadly, not only Alberta.
All right, Curtis, thanks for joining us.